Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday for the last time here in the year of our Lord 2025. I hope all of you out there had a very Merry Christmas with your families. I hope you enjoyed the time. I hope that those of you that didn't have to shovel over a foot of snow between a couple driveways today, like myself, that you're getting to enjoy this kind of white Christmas. We got absolutely loaded here up in Connecticut, and I know other parts of the Northeast got around the same kind of snow as well, which as a kid I loved, and now is just extra work before I clock in here at the ETV Community Media Center. Now, there was a lot of takes, there was a lot of opinions on this program during 2025. I want to talk about some of the things that I was right about in 2025 as we say goodbye to the year that was. I was right on a handful of free agent acquisitions and landing spots where they would go. Roki Sasaki, obviously going to the Dodgers. There was some interesting ones in terms of where I thought some teams would finish. I didn't get all the playoff teams right, but I think getting the Blue Jays going from worst to first, I should have put some more money on that. I was fairly confident that they could do it. They were still trying to win baseball games. They've been spending like they want to win baseball games, and now after coming up short in the World Series, they are spending more and more money and are looking to still add this offseason. I think the Blue Jays was one of my biggest hits of the year. And then in terms of the playoffs, man, I was not doing well up until the championship series. And even then, I almost came up short. So I think just not betting against the Dodgers is something I know a lot of people out there want to hate on them. If they're not Californians, they're not Dodger fans, they want to hate on what the Dodgers are doing. Appreciate it. A bunch of my buddies call me Dodger Dom on the program. I'm far from a Dodgers fan, but I will always respect greatness. I will always be in awe of the 1% of the 1% of players, which the Dodgers have a couple of those guys. And it is really, really fun to watch them play. It is not easy to do. We have not seen back-to-back World Series champions since the late 90s, early 2000 Yankees, and they're going for a three-peat next season. Where Dom was wrong, I think my biggest swing and a miss in terms of the landing spots was I had Pete Alonso going to the San Francisco Giants. Now, the San Francisco Giants did end up looking for a power hitter and trading for one in Rafael Devers. But Pete Alonso, I think, doesn't just want to be paid, which he ended up getting paid by the Orioles. But I was wrong twice this year, basically, about where Pete Alonso would go. First, I thought he was going to be a Giant. He went back to the Mets. Then I thought he was going to be a Yankee. He went to the Orioles. So I said orange, and he stayed orange. Then I said not orange, and he went back to orange. Pete Alonso wants to hit 500 career home runs. That's his best tool. It is his most likely chance of being immortalized in the Baseball Hall of Fame. And going to a place like San Francisco, it significantly lessens the chances of going to a place like that. That's why a lot of people were talking about Seattle early in the process. And I was like, well, yes, Seattle would want a power hitter, but does a power hitter want to go there? And that's part of what made Cal Raleigh's magical season so special. In terms of what teams make the playoffs, I think by far my biggest miss was having the Twins in the playoffs. They were another team that I thought was still attempting to win in terms of their roster and the money they were spending and the ages. And they ended up helping a lot of other contenders and having a big fire sale during the season. So I now at least know to not believe in the Twins. And in terms of the playoffs, I had the Yankees knocking off the Blue Jays in the DS, and I truly thought whoever won that Red Sox Yankees series could beat the Blue Jays. I did not realize the Blue Jays' ability to just put bat on ball. They did a great job of that during the regular season, part of the reason why they won the division, but the bat on ball was really their edge in the playoffs. Obviously, they had great pitching performances, but their ability to get bat on ball, make the defenses work, hit balls in the gap, they did a fantastic job, and just the Yankees had no shot beating the Blue Jays, and my Red Sox probably wouldn't have had a great shot either. Here, there have been some moves since we last recorded the pod. Michael King back to the Padres on a 3-year, $75 million contract. I was not expecting the Padres to spend money like that, but I also was expecting Michael King to get a bigger contract. So I kind of understand why they were willing to extend that money to keep him. There's been rumors that they've been shopping around Nick Pivetta after a breakout season last year. So getting Michael King makes it easier to do that. But everyone kind of is saying the same thing. For the Padres to make another financial move, they would have to make a trade. So Nick Pivetta getting moved, getting out of the Xander Bogaerts contract, trading Fernando Tatis, potentially trading Mason Miller, who they just gave up a haul to get last year at the trade deadline. Maybe they move one of those guys. Manny Machado's the only guy that I think is not going anywhere. I think that even in the right package, they'd be willing to trade a Jackson Merrill. So it'll be interesting to see what the Padres do, but I liked getting Michael King back at what I felt like was a discount with how good he can be. He has true front of the line stuff, and he didn't get paid that way. I don't think Michael King is half the pitcher, well, less than half the pitcher that Dylan Cease is. And Dylan Cease got a heck of a lot more years, a heck of a lot more money. So good for the Padres. In terms of trades, there was a lot of them. The Baltimore Orioles traded for Shane Baz, an in-division trade from the Tampa Bay Rays, and they gave up a haul. Outfielder Slater DeBrun, catcher Caden Bonine, right-hander Michael Forret, and outfielder Austin O'Verne, as well as a competitive balance round A pick, all given up for Shane Baz. I thought that was extremely, extremely big overpay. Shane Baz had his first healthy-ish campaign in 2025. He was good, not great. And they paid like front of the line starter prices. I think partially because it's in division, partially because it's the Rays. But the Orioles are clearly trying to compete, and I hate to spoil predictions, but this is the formula when you look at a team that could go worst to first. It's what is the front office telling you? The front office is telling you that we still believe our window is not closed, that all these young, controllable, talented players can be better next year if we supplement them. And bringing in Pete Alonso, bringing in Ryan Helsley, bringing in Shane Baz, they are trying to win baseball games with these moves. They're not giving up this kind of prospect capital to finish in last again and miss the playoffs. So the Orioles are very likely to be one of my playoff teams when I make my predictions for 2026. There was a rare 3-team trade. Pittsburgh, Houston, and Tampa Bay. The Pirates got second baseman Brandon Lau with 30 home run power. Left-handed pitcher Mason Montgomery and outfielder Jake Mangum. The Rays got outfielder Jacob Melton and right-handed pitcher Anderson Brito, both very high in the Astros organization. And the Astros got right-handed pitcher Mike Burrows. So the price for guys that aren't front-of-the-line starters, in my opinion, Mike Burrows and Shane Baz, the Astros had to pay a lot. The Orioles had to pay a lot. The Rays ended up getting a ton of great prospects, getting rid of Shane Baz and Brandon Lau. They still could trade Yandy Diaz. I expect them to trade Yandy Diaz at some point as the first baseman market starts to wind down. And The Rays will be the Rays. Some of these guys that they're getting, they will get in their lab and will be very, very good baseball players at the major league level. I like the Pirates being aggressive. They weren't able to get a 30 home run guy to come to them. So they went out and traded for one. I know he's a rental, but I do expect him to help that lineup be a little bit more professional in 2026. So good for the Pirates. Another trade that happened, Wilson Contreras to the Red Sox. There was a lot of people speculating that this was going to happen. I don't understand why, if this wasn't going to happen, why it couldn't have been part of the Sonny Gray trade, and maybe you get a much bigger lump sum for taking both those contracts at the same time and don't have to give up double the prospect capital. But the Red Sox ended up getting Wilson Contreras and a little bit of money from the Cardinals, $8 million, for Hunter Dobbins, who showed some promise as a back-end starter last year before tearing his ACL, making a play at first base, as well as Yoker Fajardo, who was the return in the Cam Boozer trade. He throws gas and is definitely a nice dart throw, as well as a younger pitcher who is not in the top 30 prospects for the Red Sox. I think the Red Sox needed a first baseman. I would have rather paid Pete Alonso or paid Josh Naylor, which was my prediction. Another thing I got wrong. I would have rather paid one of those guys and not given up any prospects or draft capital. But hey, the Red Sox have a quality first baseman, and I'm not just talking with the bat. He also fields the position very well. The Cardinals moved him there to keep him healthy, and he had his healthiest season in a long time. So Wilson Contreras, right-handed bat, will work well at Fenway, I think. I think the fans will get behind him because he is a fun player. But now you've given up a lot of prospect depth to get two guys from the middling Cardinals. They are good baseball players, but they aren't necessarily the middle of the order right-handed power bat and number 2 locked and loaded starter behind Garrett Crochet that Craig promised us. So interesting to see what the Red Sox have left to do. They are still playing game of chicken with Alex Bregman. They have stopped pursuing Ketel Marte after the Wilson Contreras trade because they even see that they're giving up a lot of their young depth. So I don't know what the Red Sox are doing, but I will stay loyal to them as a fan, even if I don't agree with what the front office is prioritizing at this time. The White Sox made, I think, the best move of the offseason so far. And that is signing third baseman Munetaka Murakami to a 2-year, $34 million deal. They were talking about this guy getting $100 million. 5 years, $100 million was what everyone thought he was going to get. He's going to be 26 years old. He has the single season NPB record for home runs. I understand the numbers against high velocity. If you look back at almost any player that has came over in the last decade from Japan, they're not seeing velocity at the same level. The way high velocity is thrown in Japan is kind of the old baseball where there's like maybe one guy per team that can get it up there. And then a lot of it's about control in pitching as an art form, as opposed to today's MLB where there's a lot of throwers. They might not know where it's going, but it's coming in fast. So I'm not concerned about Murakami, and the fact that it got down to the point where he was willing to take a 2 or 3 year prove it deal for under $20 million a year and go play in Chicago. No team with an opening at first base, DH, or even third base. If you're a middling team, as a contender, I wouldn't feel comfortable putting him at third base. The defensive metrics are really what scared me with him. But if you're a middling team, you could put him at third base for half of the games he plays. At that price point, for the chance to unlock that power, And people have to remember Shohei Ohtani himself came over and had 22 home runs as a rookie. He might not rip the cover off the baseball, but he will provide something. And the more pitching he sees, the better he will get. He will adjust to that game versus what he was doing against 93 and below was Hall of Fame worthy over there. So I really like it. No risk. You get him for 2 years. So if he breaks out as a rookie, you can trade him. Or if he breaks out if he has a good first year and then breaks out in the first half of the second year, you can trade him. And it also allows Murakami to get over here, get 500 plate appearances, and then hit free agency again at 27, being like, look, I did it over here. Now you can't say anything. Give me my 100 million. So I really respect it. I really like the White Sox doing this. I really like Murakami saying, screw it. So really, really fun move. And I think it's going to end up being one of the best moves made all offseason. I think just the lowest of risks with a pretty damn high reward. I think this is a perfect example. I talked about how these guys in these president of baseball operations and general manager positions, they're supposed to be smarter than the fans. They're supposed to know what's going on. I think there's a little bit too much group thinks, a little too much consensus, a little too much relying on the analytics and the sciences because things like this are happening. Like, how does a guy of his stature over in Japan fall through the cracks of 28 Major League Baseball teams? Probably Colorado's like the only place lower than it, and he ends up in Chicago. The Red Sox could have used him. There's a lot of other teams that could have used him. And I think the White Sox got a good one. Another small move was Jeff McNeil going to the Sacramento A's. He was sent over with $5.75 million for a A-ball pitcher. Jeff McNeil, I've been saying this since the Nimmo trade. He has had bad blood in the clubhouse with Francisco Lindor. There's jokes about the further away he plays from him in the defensive metrics, his batting average goes up. But he also was that last guy from the Wilpon era. And I think if the Mets moves this offseason, as confusing as some of them have been, show you anything, it's that David Stearns and Steve Cohen want to move on from that era and blame that era and that culture that was built in part for the collapse that they had last year. They want new blood. They want Lindor and Soto to be the faces and the leaders of this team going forward. They brought in, a great clubhouse guy in Marcus Semien. They brought in, some relievers from the Yankees that have won before and are good rehabilitation prospects. So Jeff McNeil going to the A's. The A's had one of the worst outputs from second base last year. They get a former batting champion in Jeff McNeil that can also spell some guys in the corner outfield spots, can play third base in a pinch. I like the move for the A's, bringing in him. I think that this is a wake-up call for Jeff McNeil, that he's being viewed as a clubhouse cancer, that he's being looked at as a bad teammate. I bet you he'll be on his best behavior in Sacramento. I bet you he'll put his arm around Jacob Wilson and these young guys and enjoy hitting half of his games in a minor league ballpark when he's looking for a new contract. He will be on his best behavior. So I like the move for both teams. The Mariners brought in platoon outfielder DH Rob Refsnyder on a 1-year contract. Refsnyder has been a staple for the Red Sox the last couple of years. He's going to be a coach in the major league someday. He's a good guy. The Mariners trying to add a little extra pop, someone they can platoon in their outfield /DH spot. I don't mind the move there. I think it's very low risk with some reward there. Ryan O'Hearn ended up going to the Pirates as well. So now the middle of the Pirates lineup will have Ryan O'Hearn and Brandon Lau. So Ryan O'Hearn, a 2-year, $29 million contract, which doesn't sound like a lot. I think Ryan O'Hearn could have gotten more. I think his second half slump really hurt his chances of getting the bigger contract. But this is significant, people. This is the first multi-year contract the Pirates have extended and gotten a signature on since Ivan Nova in 2015. Major league free agent multi-year contract. The Pirates are actually trying. I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team. I'm not saying it's enough. I'm not saying it's going to be a raging success, but they're trying. And that's exciting for Pittsburgh fans. I think that they need to get one more bat. I think that they could use a guy who can close games. But I'm mildly excited about what the Pirates are doing. And speaking of, I talk about all these guys that are just sitting out there on free agency right now, starting pitchers, relievers, that would take a 1-year deal. And no matter where your team expects to be, sign them with the intent to trade them in July. Pete Fairbanks, 1 year, $13 million contract with the Miami Marlins. So he gets to stay in Florida for at least a half a season. And he's likely to get dealt. But it's only $13 million. Even the poorest teams, the smallest of small markets, which Miami is not, by the way, can do this, and they should be. The White Sox getting Murakami, like, these teams should be eating up these lower end free agents that are waiting for Alex Bregman and Kyle Tucker and Framber Valdez to sign. They should be soaking these guys up to put pressure on the bigger teams to extend contracts to them, because their backup plans are getting swooped up by the smaller market teams. They might not be able to afford or want to spend Kyle Tucker money, but they can sign a couple Pete Fairbanks. Maybe some of them end up being fixtures on the team. Maybe some of them end up just being trade chips. Maybe some of them don't work out at all, but they're 1-year deals. There's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal. So kudos to the Marlins for making one of those moves. I hope they make one or two more. But the most crazy thing that happened, I think, moves on moves, was that on Christmas Day, it was announced that Tyler Soderstrom and the A's are in agreement on a 7-year, $86 million contract extension, the largest guaranteed money in franchise history. It included an 8th-year option with escalators to max it out at $131 million. Now, don't get me wrong. Tyler Soderstrom is a very good baseball player. He is. But of all the players to be giving that kind of money to, that record-breaking money to, you give it to a guy who last year, he has 3.6 career WAR. Last year, he had 4.3. So he had negative career WAR heading into 2025. Had a breakout year, 4.3 WAR, 25 home runs, 276 batting average. He scored 75 runs, 155 hits, 34 doubles, 93 RBIs, and he stole 8 bases, 276, 346, 474 slash line, good for a 126 OPS plus. Great year for a guy who was your everyday first baseman, caught some games last year, played some left field, DH'd a little bit. He said, "Put me where you need me, coach." There's value in that. Absolutely. But when you read between the lines, I have a feeling that this is similar to what they offered Nick Kurtz. There's been talks about them wanting to extend their young players, Jacob Wilson and Nick Kurtz being the two biggest names. And I think Nick Kurtz scoffed at this kind of deal. And they said, well, if you become too expensive or we sign you to this extension, you're harder to trade. Let's lock up Tyler Soderstrom, who can be our first baseman in a couple years if we're forced to trade you. That's me reading between the tea leaves. Congratulations to Tyler Soderstrom for getting the bag from a team that does not give out the bag. Like I said, $86 million is the most ever guaranteed to an athletic player in total dollars. He's a good baseball player. He's probably the 5th or 6th best player on the team. position player. And with Leo DeVries now in the system, there's a chance that, he's nowhere near the top 5 going forward. But I think this is Nick Kurt's insurance. I think a similar deal was extended to Nick Kurtz, and he said no. And they said, okay, we'll give it to Tyler. We'll give it to Tyler Soderstrom, and put the pressure on Nick Kurtz and his camp, saying, hey, if you want to be part of the future of this thing, we want you to be here. We value you more than Tyler Soderstrom, but we don't value you this much. First basemen are not super valued in today's game. And for a guy who's a primary first baseman, yes, he will catch some games. Yes, he will DH some games. Yes, he will play left field in some games. That, to me, that's a good deal. That's a good deal for Tyler Soderstrom. You're not going to get too much more than that in the open market. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we like to throw back down the third baseline to this day in baseball history. December 27th was actually kind of barren. There were some cool moments. Most notably, there was the first ever official baseball game in Cuba in 1874 on this date. So that's a huge thing, Cuban baseball. We've had so many great stars come over the years. So that happened on December 27th. There were some minor signings and trades and retirements. But I want to talk about Al Barlick, because Al Barlick on this day in 1982 passed away at the age of 80 years old. Al Barlick is someone who I think gets really overlooked in Major League history. He worked 28 seasons, and he technically worked 30 years in baseball, because 2 years he took to serve in the United States Coast Guard. He umpired 7 World Series and 7 All-Star games. He died on this date in 1995 at the age of 82 years old. And I don't think enough is talked about with umpires in the history of any major sport. I know that better than most. So Al Barlick, here's a little bit about his story. In 1935, Barlick was helping his father in Springfield's Peabody mine when a friend asked if he could fill in as an umpire for a local municipal league game. 5 years later, Barlick debuted behind the plate in a doubleheader at Scheid Park, becoming one of the youngest umpires in Major League history at age 25. During the next 27 years, as National League's umpire, Barlick would call 7 All-Star games and 7 World Series. Known as one of the loudest umpires in the game, Barlick was respected by his peers and players alike for his hustle, stern demeanor, and strict but fair interpretation of the rules. He called his first All-Star game in just his second full Major League season before serving in World War II in the United States Coast Guard from 43 to 45. When he returned to baseball, Barlick was a crew member for the 46th World Series at only 31 years old. The boy is a natural, proclaimed Hall of Fame umpire Bill Klein. If Barlick's grandmother and his worst enemy were out there on opposite sides of the game, he would call everything the way he sees it, favoring neither side. He's going to be the best umpire in the history of the game. Barlick was part of many historic moments during his nearly 3 decades in baseball. He was the first base umpire and stood directly behind Brooklyn Dodgers first baseman Jackie Robinson when Robinson broke baseball's color barrier, April 15th, 1947. Barlick worked 6 no-hitters along with the first games at Los Angeles Dodgers Stadium, Houston's Astrodome, Pittsburgh's Three Rivers Stadium, and he was also a crew member for the National League Championship Series in 1969. I think the greatest testimony for Barlick was what is said about any good umpire. You never knew he was there, said St. Louis Dispatch reporter and editor Bob Brogue. In 1961, a poll conducted by the Sporting News determined that Barlick was the most respected umpire in National League among managers and coaches, displaying his characteristics of humility. Barlick brushed off this distinction, stating, "The very idea of the rating is unfair in that they place labels on hardworking officials who always try to do a good job." In September 1963, Barlick requested that he call the final game for Stan Musial, one of his favorite players. But true to his unbiased nature, Barlick did Musial no favors once the game began, calling the future Hall of Famer out on strikes in his first at-bat. I think I earned the player's respect, and that's the ultimate in life, isn't it? Barlick would later say, I didn't care if they liked or disliked me, as long as I had their respect. Later in 1963, Barlick was instrumental organizing the first umpires union. Throughout his career, Barlick was a vocal advocate for better pay and respect for game callers. We umpires have to shoulder too much blame, Barlick said. Yet all we do is enforce the rules. We don't write the rules. We just make certain none are violated. In 1971, his final year in baseball, Barlick was honored with an Umpire of the Year award by his colleagues. Barlick was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1989, 6 years before he passed away on this date in 1995. I know we watch games for the players, for the athletes, and they are the show. But that show doesn't happen without rules, without structure. And umpires do get too much flack in most sports. Yes, there's a human element. They aren't going to be perfect and get every single call right. But the umpires that do things the right way, that you don't really notice are there, that just call it as they see it, like Al Barlick, my hat's always off to them. Cheers to 2026, my friends. If you enjoyed the show, make sure that you like the video and subscribe on YouTube if you haven't already. Leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you're an audio-only listener, it really helps the show. But more importantly, that thing that you haven't been doing or that you've always wanted to do, I hope in 2026 you take the leap, you do it. Tell the people you love them. Enjoy your life. And like we talked about at the beginning of the episode, you're going to be right about some things. You're going to be wrong about some things. But the baseball season and life itself continues to go on. So I hope that whatever you guys do in 2026, alongside supporting the show, that you take that leap, you do those things, and you just appreciate everything, whether you end up coming out right or coming out wrong. I appreciate each and every one of you for spending this final Solo Shot Saturday of 2025 with me. I wish you all a happy new year, full of blessings, as well as achieving those goals that you all have in your hearts. I'm Dom Manna, and I'll see you guys